Settle down a little bit as we get started. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll to ascertain the presence of a quorum?
Councilor Baker. Here. Councilor Campbell.
Here.
Councilor Siomo. Councilor Edwards. Councilor Asabi George. Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flynn. Councilor Janey. Councilor McCarthy. Councilor O'Malley. Councilor Presley. Councilor Councilor Wu and Councilor Zachem. Madam President, we have perfect attendance.
Wonderful, thank you. I've been informed by the clerk that a quorum is present. At this time, I ask that all guests, my colleagues and staff, please rise as Councilor Wu comes to introduce our clergy for the day. I ask that after the invocation is delivered, that everyone remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilor Wu.
Thank you, Madam President. Today, I am honored to introduce Father John Fury from the Basilica and Shrine of Our Lady of Perpetual Help, known as Mission Church in Mission Hill. Father Fury was born into the parish, grew up in Mission Hill, attending both Mission Grammar and Mission High School, and spent 22 years as a missionary working with the Latino community. He has spent time in Puerto Rico, Santo Domingo, St. Croix, and as a parish priest at the Basilica since 1988, his role involves serving the Latino community there, as well as ministering to the daily needs of the parish. Very honored to present Father John Fury.
Good morning to everyone. When Solomon received the obligation and responsibility to take over the kingdom of King David, he was struck with the responsibility, the obligation that he had to take care of such a great amount of people. And so he asked our Lord to give him wisdom so that he would be able to fulfill that. And I'd like to read now the prayer that he offered to the Lord. God of my fathers, Lord of mercy, you who have made all things by your word, and in your wisdom have established man to rule the creatures produced by you, to govern the world in holiness and justice, and to render judgment in integrity of heart. Give me wisdom, the attendant at your throne, and reject me not from among your children. For I am your servant, the son of your handmaid, a man weak and short-lived, and lacking in comprehension of judgment and of laws. Indeed, though one be perfect among the sons of men, if wisdom, who comes from you, be not with him, he shall be held in no esteem. I'd like also to read the same now, the Oración de Salomón para alcanzar la sabiduría. Dios de los padres y Señor de la misericordia, que con tu palabra hiciste todas las cosas, y en tu sabiduría formaste al hombre para que dominara sobre tus criaturas, para regir el mundo con santidad y justicia, para administrar justicia con rectitud de corazón. Dame la sabiduría, asistente de tu trono, y no me excluyas del número de tus siervos, porque siervo tuyo soy, hijo de tu sierva, hombre débil y de pocos años, demasiado pequeño para conocer el juicio y las leyes. Pues aunque uno sea perfecto entre los hijos de los hombres, sin la sabiduría que procede de ti, será estimado en nada. Amén.
Thank you, Councilor Wu and Father Fury, for the prayer this morning. At this time, I would like to, we have some special guests who are here in City Hall today, and it's a delegation from Uganda, and they are accompanied by their deputy mayor. So I just wanted to recognize them and thank them for joining our meeting today. I'm not sure if they're, excuse me, in the chamber. Are they in the chamber? So they're walking around, I know, with James from the administration. So I definitely want to acknowledge their presence today at Boston City Hall and thank them for actually stopping by to meet some of the council members as well as the staff. So thank you. At this time, we will get into the regular order of business. Madam Clerk? Madam Clerk? Hello. Happy Valentine's Day. Happy Ash Wednesday.
We were just solving all the problems of the world. Thank you.
Approval of the minutes. If there are no corrections to be made, the minutes of the last meeting will stand approved. Seeing and hearing no objections, the minutes are so approved. Communications from His Honor the Mayor.
Docket number 0284, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $1,075,915.41 in the form of a grant for the Charles R. Shannon Jr. Community Safety Initiative, awarded by the Mass Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, to be administered by the Police Department. The grant will fund regional and multidisciplinary approaches to combat gang violence through coordinated prevention and intervention, law enforcement, prosecution, reintegration type of program. Thank you.
Docket 0284 will be placed in the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice.
Docket number 0285, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $250,000 in the form of a grant for the Immigrant Advancement Initiative, awarded by a donor group to be administered by the Office of Immigrant Advancement. The grant will fund programs, initiatives, events, and small grants that enable immigrants to play an active role in the economic, civic, social, and cultural life of the City of Boston.
For docket 0285, the chair recognizes Councilor Presley. Can you, okay. Do you want to say anything else? Okay. At this time, Councilor Presley looks to suspend the rules and pass docket number 0285. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0285 has been passed.
Docket number 0286, message in order to declare surplus these city-owned, formerly Boston Planning and Development Agency-owned parcels of vacant land and transfer to the care, custody, management, and control of said property to the Public Facilities Department. The parcels are located at Condor Street in East Boston, District Ward 1, parcel number 033640000. Condor Street in East Boston District, Ward 1, parcel number 033650000. And Condor Street in East Boston, Ward 1, parcel number 033660000.
Docket 0286 will be placed in the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. Reports of public officers and others. Madam Clerk,
Would you like me to read all three?
that would be great. Thank you.
Docket number 0287, notice is received from the City Clerk in accordance with Chapter 6 of the Ordinances of 1979 regarding action taken by the Mayor on papers acted upon by the City Council at its meeting of January 24th, 2018. Docket number 0288, communication was received from Lawrence S. DeCara, Chairman of the Audit Committee, updating the City Council of their meeting held with independent auditors KPMG LLP for the year ending December 31st, 2017. And docket number 0289, notice was received from the Mayor of his absence from the city from 6 p.m. on Friday, February 9th, 2018, until 12 p.m. on Sunday, February 11th, 2018.
Docket 0287 through 0289 will be placed on file. Matters recently heard for possible action.
Docket number 0137, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend a grant in the amount of $400,000 from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Environmental Affairs, the Division of Conservation Service Parkland Acquisitions and Renovations for Communities, known as PARC, Program Grant. The Parks and Recreation Department will administer the funds to be used to provide capital improvements to Noyes Playground located in the East Boston neighborhood.
The chair recognizes Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam President. On Monday, the Committee on Environment, Sustainability, and Parks held a hearing in regard to this docket, a $400,000 grant from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Environmental Affairs, Division of Conservation Services, Parkland Acquisitions and Renovations for Communities Grant. It's called the Park Grant for very good reason, because that rolls off the tongue a little bit easier.
Thanks.
Delighted to be joined by District 1 Councilor Lydia Edwards, who's been a passionate advocate for this park. After the hearing, received a phone call from our old pal Sal LaMattina, who also had worked very hard beginning the process of this park. It's now being led very ably into completion by Councilor Edwards. This will be an amazing thing. The city has already put in well over $3 million for this. This is a state grant that's going to help build a beautiful park, Noyes Park in East Boston. It's going to have a synthetic soccer field. I prefer turf, but the synthetic will allow more usage longer in the season. It's going to have a softball field, a baseball field, basketball courts, and perhaps most exciting to me, it's going to have energy-efficient LED lights. It's going to have not one, but 2 water filling stations. And Commissioner Cook assured me at our hearing that it will also have a sunscreen dispenser through our partnership with Impact Melanoma. This is not in my district, but Councilor Edwards, I will be visiting this park very frequently. This is going to be an amazing thing for the young and the young in heart of East Boston beyond. So ask that we can vote affirmatively in passage of this docket today. It's going to be a great thing. The RFIs will go out next month, should we pass this today. The construction will should start by May of this year, and the Commissioner has assured me that by the Little League season of next year, of 2019, so April or May of 2019, this park will be fully up and operational, and I look forward to the ribbon cutting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. At this time, Councilor O'Malley moves for acceptance of the committee report and passage of docket 0137. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0137 has been passed.
Docket number 0129, message and order for your approval, an ordinance allowing short-term residential rentals in the City of Boston. The ordinance provides a process through which certain dwelling units may be registered with the city for use as short-term rental units.
The chair recognizes Councilor Flaherty.
Thank you, Madam President. We held a 5-hour hearing yesterday, attended by over 200 residents of the city. Chief Dillon, Commissioner Christopher, and Chris English, the policy analyst, testified in support of the proposal on behalf of the administration, highlighting and engaging us on several things, including the need for regulation as a result of housing units being taken off the market and used for short-term accommodations, as well as the proposed fee structure and enforcement of the regulations along with data collection. The committee also heard from proponents and opponents of the short-term rental industry. Proponents expressing how this industry provides very necessary supplemental income to individuals who need that extra cash flow to be able to afford to live in the city and to maintain their own properties. And also opponents showed how several communities, particularly Chinatown was highlighted yesterday, they've seen developers buying up whole buildings and converting them for investor usage to short-term rental B&Bs. So the common theme, I think, as my colleagues would agree, was there was some concerns and some disapproval around the investor unit category. So that's probably going to give us a starting point as to where we're going to look to probably make some substantial amendments to the proposed ordinance. So at this time, recommending through you, Madam President, that it stay in committee. My suggestion will probably be a working session in the next couple of weeks, and let's try to get something on the books between now and the 60-day order is March the 21st. So we'll need to take action between now and then. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. At this time, docket 0129 will remain in the Committee on Government Operations. Motions, orders, and resolutions.
Docket number 0290, Councilor Janey offered the following order for hearing regarding the opportunities and challenges facing small businesses in the city of Boston.
Counselor Janey, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Council President Campbell, and many thanks to all of my colleagues on the council for being so warm and welcoming. I am incredibly grateful and extremely proud to serve on the most diverse city council in Boston's history. I also want to acknowledge my incredible staff for the amazing work in serving the residents of Roxbury, South End, Dorchester, and Fenway. I also need to pay homage to my mother, who is here today, Mummy. She is the most generous person that I know, and I am grateful for everything that she has taught me and for her commitment to family and community. She is joined by family members, neighbors, friends, and business owners in my community. It is a great honor for me as a daughter of Roxbury to serve my community. And while I am privileged to represent each of the neighborhoods in my diverse district, as today is Valentine's Day, I must proclaim my Roxbury love for the community that has given me so much. As many of you know, I was born into a large family of educators, artists, activists, and entrepreneurs who share a deep love for our community and our city. My father's grandparents made Roxbury their home almost 100 years ago, and my family has lived in Roxbury over the span of 6 generations. I am also proud of my roots in the South End. You see, my mother's grandparents escaped the Jim Crow South and came to Boston in search of a better opportunity. They wanted what we all want. They want to earn a good living, to buy a home, to give their children an excellent education. And that is the story that so many of us share, whether African American, Irish Catholic, or whether recent immigrant. Our families have arrived in Boston in pursuit of happiness rooted in the American dream. But for too many of us, that opportunity has been slipping away. Income inequality is a persistent and pervasive problem facing our city and our country. Moreover, the wealth gap is starkly drawn along racial lines and has meant that Black families in Boston have dramatically less wealth to pass on to their children. And we know historically there are 2 ways to build wealth. We can do so through home ownership, and we can do so through entrepreneurship. As everyone in this room already knows, we are in the midst of a major housing crisis. Just as rising rents are impacting residents throughout the city, rising commercial rents are putting great pressure on small businesses. In what used to be the most vibrant and thriving commercial district in the city, second only to downtown, my own neighborhood of Dudley Square now has 12 empty storefronts. Nubian Notion, an iconic local institution of deep cultural significance, has been replaced by a check cashing store. But what I have seen and experienced and learned is that there are challenges, but there are also opportunities. Today, Dudley Square stands as one of the most promising areas in our city, with 14,000 residents within a half-mile spending an estimated $85 million on retail and restaurants. But this money is being spent in Randolph instead of Roxbury, and at the South Shore Plaza instead of the South End. But I remain hopeful. The creativity, the talent, the work ethic of the residents inspires me each and every day. Our people are what make Boston strong, but it is our neighborhoods that give our people their spirit. And it is the small mom and pop businesses that give our neighborhoods their character. The investment of time, energy, and love by entrepreneurs in their blocks and their neighborhoods through the involvement of their local main streets and civic organizations is investment not only in their own business, but in the economic, social strength of neighborhoods and our people through the creation of jobs. Commendable efforts by the administration and significant work by my colleagues on this council have already resulted in improvements for small businesses, and I want to build on that good work. This hearing order will allow us to examine how we can remove barriers and utilize existing opportunities as well as create new ones. We must seek creative solutions to help established businesses remain in our city and grow, and to allow new businesses to open here. We need policies responding to the pressures of commercial gentrification, and we still have to do work in addressing the many permitting and licensing processes that can be a roadblock for many small businesses, including the access to capital. Finally, there is much more to do in supporting our small businesses owned by women, immigrants, and people of color. We need communities where people can live, work, and play. Our local business districts need to be places where you can work in an office, dry clean your clothes, enjoy a meal at a sit-down restaurant, buy a cute outfit for yourself, or a gift for a friend, catch a performance at a theater, or shop for healthy, affordable groceries for your family. This vision is within our reach, and together we can make it a reality. Today marks the day that Frederick Douglass took as his birthday. Douglass fought his entire life for freedom, justice, and equality. Over 100 years after his death, we continue that fight. Revitalizing our neighborhoods and supporting small businesses is, at its very core, an issue of justice and equal opportunity. As a community organizer, I have spent my entire life advocating for racial and economic justice. And I am so grateful for the opportunity to continue this work with all of you in this chamber and with all of you in the community that I love. Thank you so much.
Welcome to the council, Councilor Janey. At this time, would anyone like to add their name? Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Baker, Councilor Siomo, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Flynn, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Presley, Councilor Wu, Councilor Zakhem, and the Chair. At this time, docket 0290 will be placed in the Committee on Small Business and Consumer Affairs. Before I go to the next docket, Madam Clerk, I quickly want to acknowledge the delegation from Uganda. We recognized them earlier, but they weren't physically in the chamber, so I want to recognize you. If you could please stand. And they are led by their deputy mayor, and thank you for being here today, and thank you for being in the building and taking part in our council meeting, and thank you, James, for your work on this too. At this time, Madam Clerk, can you read docket number 0291?
Docket number 0291, Councilor Wu offered the following order for hearing to discuss flooding in the city of Boston.
The chair recognizes Councilor Wu.
Thank you, Madam President. I think we're all familiar by now that Boston is in a uniquely vulnerable place when it comes to our changing weather patterns and sea level rise. We saw not just a little over a month ago that when the factors are just right, a storm plus where the moon is and the tide means that almost all of the seaport, almost into Dorchester, down Morrissey Boulevard, the water is coming. And I think we think typically of climate change as affecting our neighborhoods that are closest to the water. And the city's done great work planning for East Boston and Charlestown and now into Fort Point and Seaport. But the truth is that we have to prepare not just for those right on the edge of the waterfront, but also all of our neighborhoods inside, and particularly our communities that are not able to afford that adaptation. So it's about preparing for flooding. It's about moving all the mechanicals up. But climate change also exacerbates the housing stock that is not up to standards as it is. So when you have issues of mold or lead paint, when there's flooding and all that struggle, it just makes it worse. The heat for workers who are working outside makes it worse. So I am submitting this hearing order as an opportunity to talk about what work we've done to prepare specifically for flooding in Boston, all throughout our city, and also to talk about how we're going to pay for all of this. Everything that is being floated from a major seawall in Boston Harbor through programs that would allow homeowners to renovate their homes and make sure they're completely up to the most protected standards. So some other cities that do this very well, Amsterdam might be one of the best examples. They're making plans for Amsterdam out to the year 2100. So we're good until 2030. We're thinking about 2030, but we really need to push beyond that and think about how we'll pay for it and how we'll continue to maintain all that infrastructure. So welcome that conversation. Hope everyone would consider signing on.
Thank you, Councillor Wu. Councillor Presley, you have the floor.
Just rise to commend the maker and wish to have my name added. And thank you for your steadfast leadership in this space. And I wanted to say it's an example, yet another example of your smart and forward-thinking approach. But the reality is that it doesn't even feel at this point forward-thinking because the threat is so imminent. And we do need to make sure that there's an equitable investment in the resiliency of all of our communities and not just the three that seem the most imminently vulnerable because of sea level rise and flooding. So again, thank you for your leadership and wish to have my name added. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Presley. Madam Clerk, if we could add Councillor Presley's name. Councillor Zakhem, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to also thank Councillor Wu for bringing this forward, and the risk of stealing some of Councillor O'Malley's thunder. He often reminds us that the federal government is not acting in this field whatsoever. As a coastal city, as an older city, Boston is vulnerable, so I want to thank you for bringing this forward. I look forward to a hearing, but also as someone who not only lives but also represents many of the neighborhoods in our city that were built on landfill, that are still in many ways, especially vulnerable to flooding from minor increases in water levels. It's a huge problem. I don't know how many folks remember from a couple years ago. We had the Boston Globe printed a graphic, and much of my district was underwater, or canals. It's something that is more imminent than we like to think, as Councilor Presley said. This is forward-thinking. This is important. It looks like, we have a few years before we're really underwater, but this is happening. We all see the pictures. We all see the news reports when there is unusual weather, when these things come up. We have lots of our neighborhoods are flooded. We had great Boston firefighters just last month rescuing people from flooded vehicles on the streets of the city of Boston. This is not an abstraction. This is not something that's going to happen to our children or our grandchildren. This is happening right now. So thank you, Councilor, for filing this. Please add my name, and I look forward to a hearing and making sure that we move forward on this as a city.
Thank you, Councillor Zakhem. Madam Clerk, if you could add Councillor Zakhem's name, Councillor Baker, Councillor Siomo, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Asabi George, Councillor Flaherty, Councillor Flynn, Councillor Janey, Councillor McCarthy, Councillor O'Malley, as well as the Chair. Docket 0291 will be placed in the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation.
Docket number 0292, Councilor Wu and O'Malley offer the following order for hearing to discuss resiliency standards for redevelopment or development of city-owned property.
Councillor Wu, you have the floor.
Madam President, I'm proud to work with Councilor O'Malley in spinning off a little piece of his larger work on the development standards for net zero as the city is growing and growing. As we have learned, the administration is really working hard and hitting all the goals to create more units of housing, particularly thinking about affordable and workforce housing. And so just about a week ago, the city put out an RFI listing some of the properties that we already own, libraries, community centers, et cetera, to think about how do we maybe redevelop and add some units for affordable housing on top of those, or mix it in, make it work all around. So as Councilor O'Malley is working on how we set standards in general, here's a unique opportunity where the city already is able to control and set our own standards without going to state government and talking about housing codes and building codes and all of that. The bottom line is that everyone in Boston should be able to live in a home that is healthy, that is safe, and that is prepared for the future that's going to come. And that means that residents who live in affordable housing should live in the most energy efficient, the most resilient, the most healthy type of units that can be produced. And these days, the technology is out there so that the cost differential, and Councilor Baker brought up this point before, the cost differential is shrinking and actually may not even be that much of a difference in cost to be planning for the future. And we all know that in the long run, these energy efficiency measures end up paying dividends in great numbers. So we're talking about creating opportunity for the city to commit to certain standards so that these residents of our new affordable units will live in great housing, healthy housing, also not have to pay for energy costs. If the home is so well insulated that you don't need to turn on the heat, you don't need to turn on the AC, imagine what savings that means for those people in those buildings. So thank you, Councilor O'Malley, for partnering on this and for prioritizing this separate from your other work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wu. Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Rise to thank my dear friend and co-sponsor on this ordinance, Councilor Wu, for her great partnership on this and so many other important environmental initiatives. She basically said everything I want to cover. I would just add one point, and the biggest question that we've been asked, that we will be asked, that has come up with this, which is a very valid question, a question I asked myself, is this economically feasible? Are we diluting the opportunity of building real affordable housing, something that is scarce in this city, at the risk of making energy efficient? And the fact of the matter is, the two are not mutually exclusive. In fact, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, one of the other 4 Commonwealths in the country, they put a real premium on building passive house for their affordable housing unit, and there are 3 aspects that have realized real cost savings money. One is that efficient green buildings have lower operating costs. They have far lower maintenance costs. The second is if you're using less fuel, you are less dependent on the fluctuation of fuel prices, which can vary greatly, as many of us know. And the third is there are real better health outcomes that come with passive buildings, with green buildings. So this is something that really is what we need to be focusing on. Thank all of you for your support in our efforts to look at net zero carbon on new development, on market rate, on affordable, on everything. But this specific focus that I'm partnering with Councilor Wu on is really an opportunity for us to examine an opportunity to build more affordable housing, make sure that it is healthy, not only for our planet, but for our residents as well, and their wallets. So look forward to a hearing and look forward to some quick action. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. Anyone else would like to add their name to this? Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Baker, Councilor Siomo, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Janey, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor Presley, Councilor Zakem in the chair. Docket 0292 will be placed in the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation.
Docket number 0293, Councilor Edwards offers the following order for hearing regarding the redevelopment of One Charlestown project.
Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Much, Madam President. I'm here today because we are at a pivotal moment, especially not only in Boston, but in my district, specifically Charlestown. We have the largest housing project in New England. There we have 1,100 units, and the city has endeavored to redo those units. They've been there since the 1930s. They're the oldest housing project in New England, and they need, as a moral obligation, the city needs to do something to make sure that we actually do right by the individuals that we intend to house. But there are a lot of questions and issues that come about with that process. And as a result of that, I, as the Chair of Housing, am going to be hosting a hearing specifically on One Charlestown. This is a hearing about transparency, it's a hearing about accountability, and it's a hearing about clarity. It's bringing in the stakeholders, not to talk to Charlestown, but in fact for the Charlestown to talk to the stakeholders about what they need for our future. The project is called One Charlestown. It is in 1 square mile. And what has been produced so far was overbuilt. It did not include realistic housing for all people in Charlestown, and there was no actual promise that every single one of the units would be able to be, the people who are living there in the housing project will be able to come back. And that is a massive displacement that I will fight against. And so I want those parties to come to Charlestown to hear directly from the folks in Charlestown. I want together to design the future of Charlestown and the One Charlestown project. Already in this process, we had promises of folks being able to go and take their vouchers to Florida, to go across the country, and I find those promises to be insulting to the intelligence not only of the individuals in the housing project, but to people in general. So I am asking that not only we have the hearing there, but every single one of the councilors here come and join me in Charlestown, because this will be setting a model. This will set a national model because the federal government is pulling back on investing in housing. And as each one of the housing projects, many of them in your other districts, are coming up to be redone, they're going to look to what happened in Charlestown. I'm hopeful and I'm praying that when they look at that example, they're saying, look what could happen, that we created not only housing that's deeply affordable, housing that's marketable, but pathways out of poverty through rent to own, that we're looking at how we incorporated passive housing, that we made sure that we were looking at waterfront and actually coming up with futures for people to want to stay, live, own, and become a member and become continued members of Charlestown. So I'm excited about this opportunity. I'll be door knocking and getting out there to turn out as many people from Charlestown. The BHA will be there. The BPDA will be there. Cochran Jennison will be there. Leggett McCall, their now new funder, will be there. And so I'm excited and hopeful that you all come out too. So I'm asking for this order to be put into my committee and that I hopefully have all your support.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. Would anyone else like to speak on this matter or add their name? Want to speak? Councilor Presley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and I wish to have my name added and completely agree with you, Councilor Edwards. This does have the opportunity to be something precedent-setting, and let it be precedent-setting in the best way, in the most visionary way, as a model of the cooperative visioning and development of community, which is the stakeholder and the role that the community deserves to play in the development of it. And while we know that the federal government has failed and public housing has been, divested in, ostensibly, that these investments and these upgrades are long overdue. Also very much appreciate your point around bucking against the sad reality of where so many people have been living in public housing for generations, but the opportunity to rent to own, getting to Councilor Janey's point about this being one of the main ways with which to build wealth, that we do need to get back to that. So I look forward to the hearing and being in Charlestown for the hearing, and again, I thank you for your leadership and wish to have my name added. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Presley. Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Presley's name, Councilor Baker, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Janey, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, Councilor Zakam, as well as the Chair. Docket 0293 will be placed in the Committee on Housing. Personnel orders.
Docket number 0294, Councilor Campbell for Councilor Baker.
Councilor Baker at this time moves for a suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0294. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0294 has been passed.
Docket number 0295, Councilor Campbell for Councilor Baker.
Councilor Baker moves for suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0295. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0295 has been passed. At this time, I'm informed by the clerk that we have 2 late file matters, which in the absence of objection will be added to the agenda. Hearing and seeing no objections, the late file matters are added to the agenda. The clerk, if you could please read the first late file matter.
In the City Council, February 13th, 2018, Councilor Campbell for Councilor Wu ordered that
Councilor Wu moves for suspension of the rules and passage of the first late file matter. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The first late file matter has been passed.
the second late file offered by Councilor Michelle Wu, order for hearing to discuss the City of Boston's local assessment payment to the MBTA. Whereas the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority, known as MBTA, operating budget includes, as its 3 largest sources of revenue, state sales tax, fares by MBTA riders, and dedicated local assessments levied on the 175 municipalities in the MBTA service area. The amount assessed on each city and town is determined by weighted population and level of MBTA service. Therefore, be it resolved that the appropriate committee of the Boston City Council hold a hearing to discuss the City of Boston's annual local assessment to the MBTA, and that representatives from the MBTA, Boston Transportation Department, City of Boston Budget Office, and public be invited to testify. Filed on February 14th, 2018.
Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Madam President, every year the City of Boston pays around $85 million to the MBTA. This is a payment made on behalf of all residents of the city, coming from our taxpayer dollars of every neighborhood. And yet the service that our residents are getting is not at the level that they deserve, and our residents are not being served equitably across the city of Boston. So I really hate to late file things, but this one I couldn't not do it because we just had a meeting on Friday where so many of us were in a room with residents who were saying, I can't afford to use the T because the commuter rail prices are so high in these neighborhoods that we can't make it to downtown. It's cheaper to go from Hyde Park to Providence than it is to go from Hyde Park to Ruggles on the MBTA commuter rail. We sat with those residents and we talked about what we could do and how even lowering the fares for them would mean that more people would ride, that the system would benefit overall, that there would be more people on the commuter rail instead of driving cars, traffic would be better, the Orange Line would be less crowded. And then on Monday, the MBTA board met and floated the idea of increasing fares yet again next fiscal year. That, we all know, would disproportionately impact our residents, our constituents in Boston, and again, push more people out of public transportation into cars, increasing our traffic and making it worse for everyone overall. So it's time to talk about what we're getting from this annual $85 million payment that we give to the T. And this council has worked on a ton of issues related to the MBTA, Councilor Zachem on late night service and the treatment of janitors at the T, with Councilor McCarthy on this commuter rail issue, and Councilor Malley as well on the Green Line being extended into his district, with Councilor Presley on equity. Councilor Sabi George has been really hammering this assessment piece as well. And so we need a response. We need an opportunity to talk to the T about how we can leverage this partnership that we have, because Boston's $85 million payment makes up 4% of their budget, their operating budget. That is a very large percentage for one city to be contributing. We make up over half of the third largest revenue source for them, which is this pool of 175 cities and towns. Our one city makes up over half of those payments. And again, we also generate a lot of the largest source of revenue for them, which is the state sales tax. So looking forward to discuss how we can use this opportunity as stakeholders in the T to ask for more equitable treatment for our residents as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wu, and I apologize to my colleagues if I take you out of order. Didn't see the flashing lights come in order. So I'm going to start with Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you very much, Madam President. First, I'd like to have my name added, and thank you, Councilor Wu, for your continued push on this. $85 million, almost $86 million, that's real money. And we've been talking about this specifically. I've been talking about this in District 5 for a while, and now I have a new District 5 resident, Michelle, and we've been hammering at this. The reality is the MBTA does not service Boston residents well. And when Michelle stated that you can go to Providence as cheaply as you can from Hyde Park to Boston, that wasn't a made-up story. That's the truth. And in Hyde Park in particular, 02136, we have 3 different pay rates. And I've said this a million times on this floor. If you park at Reedville and you take the Reedville train into South Station, it costs you $4 to park and $6.75 to ride. One way. Now you add that up and you keep doing the math, you're talking about just around $4,000 to get into work. And if you're a person who's making $40,000, think about spending 10% of your income that hasn't even been taxed yet to get into work. It's almost impossible. So what people are doing is parking in the neighborhoods. They're trying to get to any way to get to the Orange Line, and that area in and around Forest Hills right now is an issue to get there. So this is a big issue, and I'm glad that we're bringing this up. 4% of a budget is a big budget. I mean, can you imagine if we could add $86 million to our schools, to our parks, this is real money. So I'm looking forward to this hearing and getting to the nitty-gritty and finding out exactly how the MBTA is coming up with their solutions. If the MBTA was a business, they'd be out of business. And I'm glad that we're going to help them try to stay in business.
Thank you, Councilor McCarthy. Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Also rise to commend the lead sponsor, Councilor Wu, and all of our colleagues. Great work on this. Ask that my name be added. It is absurd that residents of the city of Boston pay different fares to go in town. And the fact of the matter is, at this hearing, I will ask the MBTA or whomever they send as a representative whether or not they would support having a tax abatement for residents of Hyde Park and West Roxbury as it relates to the assessment of the $86 million. Venture guess they would say no, because it is an absurd idea, and it is absurd that our residents are paying more. It's about fair equity. We need to be doing more to get more people to ride the T. We need to invest in it, not perpetuate this flawed management of our public transit. So look forward to really holding them accountable. As all of us know, it is frustrating that the Commonwealth really has the opportunity to affect change as it relates to the MBTA, but the city can and should be playing a role as well. That's why I'm delighted to partner with all of you to make sure we can get this done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. Councilor Presley, you have the floor.
Just rise to commend the maker and ask to have my name added, and just, you know, this is what advocacy looks like, and I just appreciate the vigilance and the cooperative spirit with which this council has taken this issue on, making it clear that just because it is technically a state issue, that we don't need to recuse our ability to influence and to advocate because we're the ones dealing with the fallout. We are certainly not seeing a return on our investment, and the fallout continues to be one on the backs of working class people, and that's just simply unjust and unacceptable. And we all see transit and access to it being reliable, and that it being affordable as simply a social justice issue. So onward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Presley. Councilor Zakhem, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to thank Councilor Wu for bringing this forward, and as she noted, we've partnered on some MBTA accountability issues in the past, including in our first term, particularly around late-night service. And I mention that again, not to give ourselves kudos, but to say that we had a very different response when Governor Patrick was in charge, when we held hearings there, and we talked about the city's assessment of the MBTA, and we talked about the impact on our residents, and they listened to us. And they changed, and they helped work with us to extend the late-night service. Under the current administration, Governor Baker's administration, they have not been willing to do this. They talk again and again about streamlining and modernizing and being more efficient, but they refuse to invest in this system, and that is where we end up with these proposals for higher fare hikes. I want to commend my colleagues, Councilors McCarthy, O'Malley, Wu, and others who have been working on this so much as it affects specific areas of our city, but this underinvestment, this taking for granted of riders and residents is nothing new at the MBTA. We cannot be talking about, you know, a savings here, a fare increase there, more efficiency. We need real investment in our transit system. It folds so much into the issues we've been talking about around housing, around equity in this city, access to jobs in our downtown areas. People need to be able to get on safe, reliable mass transit in the city of Boston. We talk over and over again about Vision Zero, about making it safer for people to walk and ride their bikes. We talk about getting cars off the streets. And this is all great to talk about, but if we do not have reliable public transit, I don't think it's fair to ask our residents to not use their cars, to take these other methods of transportation. We need to be talking about this broadly. This is incredibly timely. The city of Boston pays a huge amount of money into the T. We deserve to have a seat at the table. I am cautiously optimistic the MBTA will respond and will appear here as they have in the past and actually have had a constructive dialogue, but they need to do this, and this body, as being responsible to the voters of the city of Boston, needs to hold them accountable as well. And I look forward to also partnering with our colleagues at the State House to work on this, because it's long overdue. They need to make sure that they are rediscovering what it is to be a good service provider, rediscovering what it means to provide service to your customers that is worthwhile, and not continuing to cut services and add fares, particularly in a geographically discriminatory manner in a way that, quite frankly, makes no sense. So please add my name, and I look forward to the hearing.
Thank you, Councilor Zakhem. Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Zakhem's name, Councilor Presley, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor Janey, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Siomo, and the Chair. The second late file matter will be placed in the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. At this time, we'll move on to the green sheets. Anybody wishing to remove a matter from the green sheets may do so at this time. Councilor Siomo, for what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Madam President. Can we pull docket 0230, page 6 of 6 on the green sheets?
Madam Clerk, if you could read docket 0230, it's on page 6 of 6 of the green sheets. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. In the Committee on Ways and Means, docket number 0230, sponsored by the mayor, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority, known as MSBA, statements of interest for their accelerated repair programs for the following schools: the Rafael Hernandez School, Patrick Lydon, Donald McKay, K through 8, James Otis, Josiah Quincy E.S., Snowden International at Copley, and the John D. O'Brien School of Mathematics and Science. The statements of interest described and explain the deficiencies and priority categories for which the City of Boston may be invited to apply for the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. This was referred to committee on January 31st, 2018.
The chair recognizes Councilor Siomo on docket 0230.
Thank you, Madam President. First, let me apologize to all of my colleagues, especially the newer ones. It was filed on January 31st, and the clock kind of ran out before I was able to schedule a hearing. The deadline for submission of the statement of interest is this Friday, so we don't want to miss out on this opportunity. My colleagues would remember the statement of interest is merely an application from the City of Boston to the Mass School Building Authority in order to be considered for the accelerated repair program, which we've availed ourselves many times for boilers, windows, and roofs. So when the clerk read the docket, she mentioned the schools. I've also provided a fact sheet on what we're asking for in this statement of interest, but also where we are with other applications. And I was informed earlier before this hearing, we'll probably be back very shortly for funding of the accelerated repair program, of which we get almost 62% reimbursement from the state. So again, I ask for your support in passing this statement of interest. There's no funds associated at this point, so it would just merely give the city the approval to go ahead for the application. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councilor Siomo. At this time, the question now comes on acceptance and passage of docket 0230. Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll.
Councilor Baker. Councilor Campbell.
Yes.
Councilor Campbell, yes. Councilor Siomo.
Yes.
Councilor Siomo, yes. Councilor Edwards. Yes. Councilor Edwards, yes. Councilor Asabi George. Yes. Councilor Asabi George, yes. Councilor Flaherty. Yes. Councilor Flaherty, yes. Councilor Flynn. Yes. Councilor Flynn, yes. Councilor Janey. Yes. Councilor Janey, yes. Councilor McCarthy. Yes. Councilor McCarthy, yes. Councilor O'Malley. Yes. Councilor O'Malley, yes. Councilor Presley. Yes. Councilor Presley, yes. Councilor Wu. Councilor Wu, yes. And Councilor Zachem. Yes. Councilor Zachem, yes. Madam President, we have 12 in the affirmative and the noes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Docket 0230 has been passed. At this time, we will move on to the consent agenda. I'm informed by the clerk that there is one late file matter, which in the absence of objection will be added to the consent agenda. Hearing and seeing no objection, the late file matter is added. The chair at this time moves for adoption of the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The consent agenda has been adopted. At this time, I'd like to recognize Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam President. I ask unanimous consent to make a brief statement.
Yes.
Thank you. One of the people of whom we are closing in memory today is Don Watson, and we are joined today in the chamber by Gloria Watson, his widow. And I just wanted to speak a little bit about Don because he was an amazing man, a great Jamaica Plain legend. The Watson family and the O'Malley family have been friends for long before I was around. Don graduated from Boston English High School with my dad in 1967. He was a Boston Public School educator, teacher, became the assistant principal in the Curley School, really helped turn that school around. He was always involved in the Jamaica Plain Neighborhood House coaching kids in, youth floor hockey and softball and baseball. Just an amazing guy. He did the Pan Mass Challenge, I think, 20 years. A real great athlete and just a general soul. And he was diagnosed with cancer right around this time last year. Gloria was telling me that Valentine's Day was always his favorite day. And I was very glad that many of you helped us last May. We designated Don Watson Day just to cap off a remarkable career. And so, Gloria, on behalf of all of us, we are so sorry for your loss, and we are a far better city because of your husband. And we will think about him forever. So thank you for indulging me, colleagues.
No, thank you, Councilor O'Malley. And can we just quickly have the family stand up so that we can recognize you? And thank you. Thank you again, Councilor O'Malley, and happy Valentine's Day to the family. At this time, I would like all guests, my colleagues, staff, to please rise. We will begin to adjourn today's council meeting in memory of the following individuals. For Councilors Flaherty and Councilor O'Malley, Don Watson. For Councilors Flaherty and O'Malley, also Patricia Cawley. For Councilors Siomo, Thomas McCauley, Edward Consandiani. For Councilor Janey, Marilyn Hamilton. For Councilor Presley, Janice Kerrigan. For Councilor Wu, Richard Murch. For the Chair, William Bill Dornhofer. At this time, a moment of silence. Thank you. The chair moves at this time that when the council adjourns, it does so in memory of the aforementioned individuals, and we are scheduled to meet again on Wednesday, February 28th at 12 noon in this chamber. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. The council is adjourned.
So we're missing the personnel order, unless I have the